So quick background on me. I don't actually have a slide for this, so you just have to listen to this while I talk. So my name is Joshua Ruby. I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado initially, and I have been building custom homes, specifically insulated concrete form custom homes with in-floor heat. Most of my market was homes back then. This was 2005 to 2010. Most of the homes were in the $500 to $800,000 range. I think the smallest one we did was like 3,000 square feet. But so that was kind of the homes I was doing. And so I learned that I was the right-hand man to the general contractor since I was 15. And then after that, I went and served an ecclesiastical mission for my church and from 19 to 21. And then after I got home from that, I worked there for a little bit longer. But the housing market's always a little volatile, so I wanted a backup plan. And so I came up to Brigham Young University in Idaho, in Rexburg, Idaho, about, eight years ago now. Yeah, almost 9 years ago now. And to get a mechanical engineering degree as a backup plan. And so while I was up at school, I was studying mechanical engineering, and a lot of my ideas and interests were around composites, both specifically composites such as carbon fiber and fiberglass and concrete, reinforced concrete, glass fiber, reinforced concrete, thin cross-section concrete systems. But basically, I really like the idea, and what really interested me in composites is the idea of using various and totally different but complementary systems to create a better system. And so, for instance, in carbon fiber, you have a matrix, which is the resin, and the matrix job is non-structural. It has no structural use. Its only job is to hold still the fiber, which is the reinforcement, and then it has the fiber reinforcement, which is the carbon fiber, which, if left by itself, is totally useless because it's all floppy. But when you mix them two together, you can maintain the orientation of the fibers by the rigidity of or actually just by the adhesion of the matrix, and the two together then can create a composite whole system. And so everything I do is basically around that idea of taking multiple elements and taking where one is weak and one is strong, putting them together until they're both a bigger system. And so that's really what I was going into. And so my emphasis in mechanical engineering is actually in composite systems. And then as I was going through school, it had always been a backup plan for me. I never really planned on becoming a mechanical engineer for somebody else, but I became more and more interested in the idea of helping people who don't have a lot of resources to build themselves out of poverty. And so I wanted to take mechanical engineering and go to these low and zero resource communities around the world and help them manufacture things locally in their own areas and help them build themselves out of poverty. And I became less and less interested, or more and more disenfranchised, however you want to word it, about building large, extravagant custom homes and things. I believe there's a great deal of need for projects like that, simply because they give artisans a chance to do stuff they would not otherwise have a chance to do, to help build their experience. Similar to the Renaissance, it was funded by the banks or the bank owners of Italy. And because these very wealthy people had time to spend money on art, the Renaissance came about. So I believe there's great value in that. But for an instance, I live about an hour and a half away from Jackson, Wyoming, which is basically a millionaire and billionaire playground. And the homes there. I consulted on a home last summer, the $22 million custom home. And it was just totally obnoxious as far as the plans for that house. But if as an architect, it's an architect's dream, because it's just a playground when the money doesn't really matter. And you can do really cool stuff. But anyways, I became kind of disenfranchised with that, because I'm like, I have other things to do, and I think I'd rather solve real problems rather than just kind of fun problems. And so while I was in school, I did custom consulting for people, helping build homes. And I actually built a house in my sophomore year for a guy, because he had wanted an insulated concrete form house, and I'm the only one in the area who knew anything about them. And so I did that in the evenings while I was in school, helped them build the large bulk portion of that house. And so I've never really been out of the building while I've been in school even. But while I was in school, probably around my sophomore year of school, a realtor was looking for a prototype for something else that he was designing. And so I built the prototype for that, because he was just looking for a mechanical engineer. And so I did that prototype. And then he had asked me kind of my background. He's like, "Oh, you build homes, do you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well," he's like, "would it be possible to build a low-cost home that you could sell for about this much?" And I said, "Well, maybe. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to design it." And so then he said, "Well, there's this idea called pocket neighborhoods that you might be interested in." And I said, "Okay, I could look into it." So anyways, so I bought the book Pocket Neighborhoods by Ross Chapin, and that's this guy. And so Ross Chapin wrote this book called Pocket Neighborhoods. Looks like this. So I bought that book looking for ways that I could implement his method into making homes cost a little bit less and still give you a lot of lifestyle or abundance and amenities. So I read the book, and I was very intrigued by it. And I thought, this is a really cool idea. And then while I was doing research on pocket neighborhoods, I found a thing called cohousing. And cohousing basically is its own subset of housing that basically was stolen from a Danish, or I don't know if it's Danish, that's Netherlands, Denmark. I can't ever remember. It's European, either Danish or either the Netherlands or Denmark. I think it's Denmark though. Where most of the people in Denmark live in a co-housing situation. I think it's like 75% of the population or more lives in that. Well, anyways, two architects back in the 60s had visited there and said, "This is really cool. We could probably do this over in the US." And so they've started that. And so then they wrote books called I think it's called Cohousing, actually, is the book by McDermott and Durant or something like that. I have to remember their names. But so anyways, I bought that book as well, and I bought several other books on cohousing. But this whole thing's a really good resource for cohousing. And then among this whole thing, just to kind of tie it all together, someone had asked me back when I was, well, because I'm a custom builder, people always ask me, "So what would you want in your own custom house?" And I thought to myself, I'm not really sure. I've never sat down and thought about it. I've never really been interested in a big house, but I wrote kind of down a list in my mind of things that I wanted in a house. And I'm like, well, I want enough bedrooms for the people. So let's say 3 bedrooms, say a master and 2 or 3 other bedrooms for the kids. And then I'm like, and I want at least 1 guest bedroom for guests to visit, and I guess a couple bathrooms to go with the bedrooms. That makes sense. And then good dining area, living room. Okay, that's kind of all I need in the main floor. But I'm like, I would always wanted to host like community dances and stuff, and to give like people a place to go. So I'm like, that'd be cool in the basement if I did like if I dropped the basement and had this big open room that had like a basketball court, and you could play volleyball in there and have people over and do dances, stuff like that. I'm like, but then really what I want really what I want is workshop space. So I was like, maybe if I did a perimeter around that basketball court of various rooms, I could have one for woodworking and one for welding and one for carbon fiber layup and one for textiles and quilting and one for various things. So I had 12 rooms set about it. And anyways, I drew all of it up and I looked at it and it was really sweet. And I said, and I showed my wife and she said, it better come with a maid. And I said, yeah, that's a good point. That's a little excessive because it eclipsed like 11,000 square feet or something. Most of it in the basement and underground workshop space. I said, you know what I really need is I need a small 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, about 1,000 square feet. And then I need to build like a big shop building, like 50 by 100 shop building, and put all my stuff in the shop building. And then I thought to myself, well, you know, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to spend $2 million on a setup and then spend my time trying to make money to pay off that $2 million for that setup. And then that beautiful shop with all my beautiful tools, I would walk in once a month and look at my dusty tools and say, I'm sorry, tools, that I never get to use you. I apologize that I am wasting your existence. And so I thought what I really need is I need a group of people who all like to build stuff and like to do stuff. And we can get 10 little houses around this thing. And then we put the community building in the middle, and then we can share that resource space. So then the building's kind of living because people are coming and going and they're working on their projects, and you get, hey, we want to go work on our projects tonight, and you can go together and like it's in a living thing. I said, okay, that's a way better situation. And so through all that, it combines co-housing, pocket neighborhoods, and that ideal, which I almost consider like a makerspace village of people who are what I refer to as the nerdy engineer type, like myself. And anyway, so that brings us to this co-housing neighborhood. So I been designing this for the last couple of years, but my expertise is in designing and construction and not in marketing or getting people together and things like that. So so it never really took off the ground because I tried to market it out to try to design it as a group, which is the co-housing ideal. The co-housing ideal is you find a group of people who have like-minded ideas and you come together and kind of formulate your ideas together and build it organically as a group. So it's the group's own creation. And so I tried doing that, but I couldn't get any traction with people ahead of time. And I said, fine, what I'll do is I'll help guide them, kind of like just a regular house on the market. I'll basically kind of make a spec home idea and let people just come to that. And so I spent my time and did that. So this is what it came to look like. Let me move my screen here. Oh, it's not moving. Oh, here we go. Minimize that. So so I found a piece of land in Idaho Falls, Idaho, because one of the list items on my list of things, it's my wife's list item, but I've grown to appreciate it as well, is that it needs to be in or really close to a city of a decent size. We live in Rexburg, Idaho right now, 34,000 people, and my wife is only here because she loves me more than she should. But she definitely does not want to stay here because it is too small for her. She wants stuff to do and place to go and things like that. And so Idaho Falls is just to the south of me, about 30 minutes, and they are about double the size of us and growing rapidly. And so it's a nice town. They have a zoo and stuff like that to actually go to. And so that was one of the things on the list. Other things on my list of things that I wanted in a house are, I want the house to help pay for itself. So I wanted a room that I could rent out to other people. So partially just so I could help people who need housing, and as well as for those people in times of not bad times, then just rent it out for market rate to help pay for my house. I want workshop space. I want good play area for my kids. And then I want place to be able to grow things and do my own food harvesting and everything of that nature. I've never been a food producer because I've lived in the suburbs my whole life, and I've lived in little tiny plots of land while I've been in college. So I've never actually owned property or done that, and I've worked 16-hour days probably for the last decade or so. So I actually don't know what it's like to not do that. So I've never done a whole lot of stuff that way, but I've always wanted to. So I've tried to set it up for that. And then I've always wanted recreational space, either to have like an outdoor basketball court or something like that. I don't even play basketball, but at the time that sounded interesting. Now I play pickleball a ton. So I play a lot of pickleball. So I'm more interested in pickleball courts, but you can do basketball and volleyball on them as well, which I also love volleyball. But anyway, so those are kind of the things I wanted. And so when I designed this building, I said, according to the co-housing ideal basically says the neighborhood should be built for the people that live there and not their vehicles. And so they said, let's take away the neighborhood model that says, let's have a corridor of streets with little parking spots pulled off of it. Let's strip all that infrastructure out, push it to one side, and we make one roadway in, and possibly two roadways, depending on the situation. But this is how this one was designed. We have a roadway in, and then parking is all set to one side. So this is all set for parking. And then there's one basically common driveway amongst everybody. And then all the homes are set to the other side. And so all the homes are set to the other side, and they kind of face each other and face a common green area. And this is important for several reasons, but the biggest ones are it saves a lot of space. You can do a lot more in less space if you don't bifurcate it with streets and roads and driveways. And then the other biggest reason is safety and familiarity, because you don't have, you can go to your friend's house by walking across the grass lawn instead of walking across the street. Okay, so it's great for kids, and then you can see your neighbors and stuff, and you can say, hey, someone was out over in the big yard. You can go out into the big yard. And then in the pocket neighborhood and co-housing ideals, one of the other ideals is personal autonomy separate from the group. And so each house right here is, these houses, they're all set to be the same, and that's for economy's sake. If you have 15 custom homes, it adds a lot of expense. So generally speaking, all the homes are planned with the same footprint, and within that footprint I have various models, which I'll show you in a little bit. But they have this home. These are all 25 by 57, which happens to be the perfect dimensions when working with my ICF block, because the houses have to be made properly. I'm trying to take what I built for wealthy people and simply miniaturize it and build for maybe possibly not wealthy people, but it doesn't matter, you can be wealthy or not wealthy, but I think it's still nice to have a nice house. And so all of these homes have in-floor heat and European style tilt turn windows, triple glazed glass. I mean, they're all basically passive house ready. If you threw a solar panel on it, which it's ready for, they would be net zero energy homes. But anyways, the homes there are in their own yard, and so this is their yard space, and so they have their own yard space. This is about 15 feet on both sides, and kind of wraps around, and so they have their own private yard space, and then they have a porch. Okay, a porch is like really big. If you listen to Ross Chapin talk on the elements of a pocket neighborhood, the biggest things he mentions are you need common walkway space kind of going between the homes. You need a porch that people can wave at each other and kind of sit on the porch. He specifically even mentions you want porches that have railings that you can sit on the railings. So yeah, you need to have at least a 6-inch wide cap on the top of your porch railing. So it's little details like that that you wouldn't think of that make a big difference. But it's when you can stop by a friend's house and sit on the railing and chat for a couple minutes versus feeling standoffish. And then the other thing is, in the pocket neighborhood, we don't have any fences taller than 4 feet. And he goes through this idea when you go through here, but he has all this stuff on design patterns, and within it, he goes through and basically you stuff the car to one side, you connect things, and then layers of personal space. And so this whole idea of basically you have private space, or so you have open space where everything's kind of open, and then you have plants and small open fences which kind of delineate public space from private space, and then you have more guarded architecture and awnings which separate more public from more private, and then you keep going deeper and deeper toward the house where the living room is more open, and then you get further to the house where it's bedrooms and it's private space. And so it all works from the inside out like that in layers of personal space. And so all of these things, so this is really great for just people to look about anyways, but so that was kept in mind going through in these. So all of those then face a public walkway, this sidewalk that wraps around here. And then in that area is a big grass open space. And so this is all flat because I like grass only if it's used for something. And I'm a big sports player. I'm a work hard, play hard sort of person. And when I sit down, I fall asleep. And so we, this inner field here is the size of a volleyball field. And so that's a volleyball court. And this size here is the size of the youth soccer field, as well as the youth hockey arena. And then we have trampoline and playground areas. This is like mulched and playground and big playground areas. And then I'll put in some bleachers here too, actually, so people can sit and play on the teams. And then over here, I call this the little 100-acre wood. In this particular layout is I wanted to plant some big trees here, partially to screen it from the side of the road. We have a 6-foot concrete panel fence that goes across here to kind of screen us from the surrounding neighborhood to kind of keep us nice and cozy here. But then this big tree area, I was going to plan to make a replica of Rabbit's house from Winnie the Pooh, and then put Owl's tree on top, and it basically creates a kid's playground area, and then as well as like a calm walking garden space here. And then up here, we have the driveway space. So we need a place for fuel and paints and stuff like that, and what I call more caustic and hazardous supplies. They would go into this community shed here, and so they would go in there. And then we have the community building, which I'll go through here in a minute. And then on the outside of the community building, we have a gathering fireplace. We have an outdoor pickleball court. And then we have this greenhouse here. And so this greenhouse runs the length of the community building. It bases its principles off what's referred to as the Chinese greenhouse, which basically you have your greenhouse this way, and your end walls can either be shaded or not, but you have end walls. But on the north side, you have a large thermal retention system. And so oftentimes it's just a solid concrete wall or cinder blocks filled with sand or whatever. In this case, because the buildings are already made of concrete, because that's how I build things, I would build this wall out of concrete as well. And it would just be exposed concrete on the south side with all of its insulation on the inside. And how that works then is during the day, the sun heats that wall, and then it permeates back into the greenhouse at night, helping cool it. And so this maintains a greenhouse year round, as well as the greenhouse also has a geothermal warming and cooling by having tubes underneath the foundation of this building. They run and they circulate air into here. If you've not seen LDS preppers videos on YouTube on geothermal greenhouses, that is a video to watch. But basically this is based on the same principle, but instead of being standalone, it's tied to the side of a building, and it gives you a really abundant greenhouse. And then as a community, you can govern yourselves however you see fit, because you could slice this up into like 15 different slots for the different people. So everyone has their own, say, 10 by 20 spot. Or you can say, hey, how about the whole group come together? Let's do this section is all vegetables or whatever. This one's all fruits. This one's all whatever. And let's get crazy and try to grow some rice or something. I don't know. You can do whatever you want. And then you could change it every season. Be like, oh, let's try this season. I want to try to grow something by my own over here or whatever. And you could do that. And it's variable that way. And the reason it's variable is because the type of governance goes one layer deeper to than things. And this is a big thing for me. I'm a pretty staunch libertarian when it comes to don't touch my stuff, let me do what I want to do kind of guy. And so it's almost counterintuitive for a person like me to be creating a neighborhood that not only is there an HOA, which is like already a bad word in most people's minds. Like mine, like 10 years ago, if you would have told me I was going to live in an HOA, I would have said, there's no way on heaven's green earth that I was going to be living in an HOA neighborhood, pal. I have some serious experiences where I do not like those things. But that's because a poorly run anything is terrible. And oftentimes HOAs are poorly run. And so the entity itself may not be bad, but the, what's it called? The way it's ran makes it feel bad. And so people have a bad experience with it. It's like, I went to a Mongolian grill a couple months ago. I went to a Mongolian grill 16 years ago. Mongolian grill, it was great. And it was great food. I went to one a couple months ago and it was terrible food. And so had I gone to that second one first and someone invited me to go to a Mongolian grill, I would have told them, no way, thank you. Do not like Mongolian food. But it turns out they just had bad food. It wasn't that Mongolian food is bad. And I think that's the way with HOAs too. Oftentimes people have had a bad experience because the people who are doing them aren't good at them, because A, they're new to them and it takes more than they're used to. So anyways, that said, I was a little bit concerned about that. So I have, I'll talk about the government here in a little bit, but that's been a big driving factor for me. Is it's great to have all this stuff, but it has to be managed, the psychological component and the human component as well. All right, so let's dive into some of the stuff here. So that's the whole overall site plan. Let's go to the community building because that's my favorite part of this whole place. So on the community building, on the main floor, as this neighborhood was designed, is you come in from this road, and on this whole north side, every house has their own garage. So these garages are 12 feet wide and 30 feet deep. That's big enough for a car and a bunch of bike storage, or 2 compact cars. It's a pretty good sized space. If you wanted to get a sense for how big that space is, most hotels you visit are the exact footprint of 12 by 30. I went through like 4 hotels over Christmas and I measured each room and they were all 12 by 30. So that's kind of the standard apartment size for a hotel. So it's a good sized room. And so they all have one of those. So the garage door opens there, and then they would park their car, and then there's a man door here that you just walk through that. And then you can kind of walk through this corridor space and come check the mail. And then you go down and walk to your house. Inside the community building, we have several things. So here we have a wood shop. And so it has a door to here. And so this is basically what I refer to as the dirty shop. So this is where you do woodworking. We'd have a space for welding. I would love to have a little anvil for some blacksmithing. Have auto tools set up and a lift. So you could do your own automotive stuff and stuff that way. So that's that shop. And then here is the sports court. And so this area here is all wooden floored sports courts with lines for volleyball. Pickleball is what's currently on the ground there. That's pickleball. You could easily have basketball hoops on both sides. And I've considered really doing a lot of stuff with that room, because you could have it set up so you could pull down a stage and give concerts or whatever, and have rows of seating here, and do you could just do community neighborhood plays and puppet shows or what have you, and have this little basically venue. It's just an open venue to use for whatever. And then we have an aquatic center. And so in here, so doors in here, we have a bench seat here, and we've got a hot tub, and then we have a pool. And I've always wanted to train for triathlons. And eventually, actually, I've always wanted to race triathlons. And eventually I figured I'd train for one. But So I've always wanted to do a few Ironman, but so in the swimming pool, there are 2 pool current generators. And so these are underwater treadmills, as well as, so you could run under the water on powered treadmills, and then as well as to swim perpetually as well. And then this is just pool area. And then we also have a sauna, and then the bathroom that services the aquatic center. And then here we have a playroom. And so the playroom um, is here, and it's here for a specific reason, which I'll mention in a second, because there's a lot of psychology that you have to go into when you design a place like this. But we have this half bath, which has a door just to the playroom, and then you could kind of close that door, but it also has a door to the main room here as well. So that way kids can just use the bathroom without having to go wander around the building. And the playroom is actually separated with some stair systems, because this is actually slightly dropped in this design, so you can get some extra height in here that you wouldn't otherwise have. Then next to this is the gym. So this is where the community gym would be very similar to what you would see in a hotel or an apartment complex. So that's the gym. And then the wall between the gym and the playroom is clear, and so that way you can see them. And if it weren't clear, you would have closed circuit television, and you can see them on the app and have cameras and stuff, which I would plan for there to be cameras a lot of places, so people in the community can look up on their phone app and say, hey, they're on a sports court, and there's a little camera facing the sports court, and like, oh, look, someone's showing up to go play pickleball, I'll go head out and meet them there or whatever. So and so you could do that. In the area here, this is an essential component of co-housing. So the co-housing model basically says, hey, let's bunch together community amenities and share them, because it's silly for us to all have them. So rather than everyone having their own lawnmower, let's have 2 lawnmowers that services the whole neighborhood, okay? And so they do that with the community garage service. So community tools, community maintenance equipment would go in the community garage and the community shed. But then they take it one step further and say, you know what, how about, because we are just one big group, and I found this too, because I currently live in a trailer neighborhood. The homes are close to each other, and the homes are relatively small, and it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. But because there's no overarching intention with the societal component of the neighborhood, it's awkward, because I live 25 feet from somebody and I wave at them and I know them very little. And that's why I think there's a big disconnect and aversion toward apartment living for some people, because if you live 10 feet from someone and don't know them, there's a weird, awkward feeling. But if you live next to someone and you know them well, it's a good feeling. And it doesn't matter how close you are at that point. But the disconnect is when your proximity is close, but your relationship is distant. That makes a weird situation. And I think because Americans and Western culture in general is so used to being isolated independence rather than being interdependent groups, because they've gone so far afield to isolating themselves and saying, I need to be independent, no one can touch me, I don't want anyone to have, no one touch my stuff. Because we've gotten to that point, but we've neglected having friends next to us, it becomes awkward and we feel repressed when that's the situation. But I think the exact opposite is true. If you're close to each other with people you associate well with, you have a huge life abundance mentality of, look, I have everything I need. I got my friends next door, I've got all my stuff, and life's great. And so the biggest difference there is one has an intentional disposition toward creating that community fabric, and one doesn't. And if you don't have an intentional method for it, both in the structures of the way of having spaces to create it, such as having community play spaces, so that's half of the thing, but the other half is actually having the governmental or the management system in place to encourage it. And so you can have a dining room and a community kitchen here, but people aren't going to use it unless you specifically mention, hey guys, let's come together once a week and eat dinner together as a group, as a neighborhood. And to a lot of Americans, that's like, well, that's a weird idea. I'm like, yeah, except for it makes a whole ton of sense. So it should really be a really great idea. And so that's what this space is for. So during the day, this space would have tables like ping pong tables, pool tables, air hockey tables, foosball tables, what have you, and just other tables. And then at night, you can put a lid on those tables and they become dining room tables. And then you can come together a couple times a week, however, depending, and you could kind of vary it depending on people's lifestyle in the neighborhood. Sometimes it may be good to do it just twice a week. Sometimes it's good to do it all 7 days a week. There's some co-housing neighborhoods that do community kitchen and community dinners every night. I think I'm more of the twice a week kind of guy, but I don't know because I've never experienced it. I just imagined what it would be like. But there's a room here. It's a commercial quality kitchen designed so the neighborhood could come together and have a few volunteer cooks, cook dinner for everybody. And then everyone takes turns cooking and cleaning. And then that just goes through on a rotation, similar to anything else that you would have in like cleaning the church building. It just goes through on cooking dinner or whatever. And that's the main level. And then upstairs, it goes upstairs and we have these flex rooms. So above their individual garage, everyone has a 12 by 30 room that they can use for whatever they want. If someone wants to collect a bunch of comic books, great, they can collect all their comic books. If someone wants to run an architectural company or general contractorhood like I would do, I'd run my business out of here, and I'd have my office over here, my wife could have her office over here, we could both run our businesses out of that room. If someone wanted to run a massage therapy clinic, they could have that up here, and they can have clients come and meet them at the door and then come invite them and walk them to their room. Basically, this room could be for whatever people wanted it to be. The intent is if there are businesses, they would have to be what I refer to as appointment only businesses, where you meet them at the door and come in. It wouldn't be one of the signs where you just pop up a sign and have people walk in, because it's still a private neighborhood. And then you could test that out and see how it works and vary the rules on those as the community grows and evolves, by having conversations with each other to say, hey, how's this working? Do we need to change how we are running that? And keep it fluid, which I'll talk about in the governance section later. So those rooms are all up above. And then this area is the walkway. So this balcony overlooks this open court below. And so this room has 20-foot high ceilings, so it's big enough for volleyball and basketball, and more importantly, pickleball. And then above what I refer to as the dirty workspace is the clean workspace. And so this Tinker Maker workspace has place for like painting, laser engraver, soldering equipment, stuff like this, basically things you would see in a makerspace, 3D printers, stuff like that. And then it would have assembly tables. Like this would be a great space that way. And then here is what I refer to as the library, office, and lounge. And so instead of everybody having their own stupid printer that eats ink like crazy, you can buy one really nice commercial printer copy machine and have it over here in the office space, and everyone can be just connected to that. And so that way, when you print something, you can do what you need to do and it doesn't cost a fortune. Which it makes sense when you can split it 15 ways. And there's a lot of things like that, not just the copy machine, but just everything. And that's what this whole premise is about. And then instead of everyone having their own individual guest bedroom, which mostly just adds space to their house that they don't use much, we can put guest bedrooms in the community building. And so when people have a baby or whatever, and they have in-laws coming to town or what have they can just reserve and say, hey, I'm going to need guest bedroom 1 for like 4 days or whatever. And we just create a sheet and manage it that way. And when these two aren't being used, if the community wanted to help offset the cost of their HOA fees or their dues to maintain this community building, they could rent these out as Airbnb units. Or they could, if you're getting really intense, like I would love to do personally, is there's a group called Workaway, workaway.info. And if you haven't heard of it, it's basically the coolest thing I've never done. And it basically, you go to a place because you want to say travel for cheap, or you just want to meet new people. And in exchange for housing and food, you work with them on whatever project they're doing. So like you can go, it's kind of like a kibbutz, if you learn about Israeli kibbutzes at all. But it's like a part-time deal. Like you'll go work for 2 weeks. There's a lot of people making eco village gardens and stuff. And you're like, come stay, you can stay in our little side hut while we build this neighborhood village garden space or whatever. But yeah, generally speaking, for say they'll work like 4 hours a day and then they can stay in the guest bedroom. But that'd be great for us because then we could have workaway people come and stay when they're traveling through. And where I'm currently located, I'm just a few hours away from Yellowstone. We get a lot of people like that. And I've hosted people from, I do couch surfing as well. So if you haven't done couch surfing, everyone should do that as well. But couchsurfing.org for those who are curious. But I've hosted people from Venezuela and not Venezuela, Colombia, Colombia, and they're not the same apparently. Colombia and Italy and Germany, all people all over the world, and they'll stay with me. And they'll cook me dinner that night from their country, and it's really cool. But they could stay here, and then they could help clean the swimming pool and clean and go and help clean up around the building and help take care of it. And so by utilizing the guest space as an asset to both rent out as well as to trade out for labor, it helps reduce our maintenance requirements. So then up here, we have a bathroom, which services those guest bedrooms, as well as it services upstairs. Probably going to have to put a bathroom up here as well. So we have a little bit more bathroom space for the offices upstairs. Then we have another craft room upstairs. If you can't tell, I like building stuff. And so in this craft room, this one is mostly dedicated toward textiles. So quilting, crochet, yarns, that sort of thing, scrapbooking. What you would see if you've ever seen, if you've ever been on Pinterest, no, there's a new business out there called Pinterested. And no, that's not what it's called. It's called Pinspiration. Yeah, it's called Pinspiration. So this room basically is Pinspiration. And then in here is a theater room. And so then it has community stadium seating, and the screen goes against that back wall. And then up here also is a snack bar. So it has stuff for the theater room. So that's the upstairs. And then from the kitchen going downstairs, we go right here. This is what I refer to as what just like, as Emerald Lagasse would say, one more notch. All right. So this is the cool part. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole building. So you're coming downstairs. This room here, I refer to as the freezer storage room. So every family in the neighborhood, because their houses are smaller and a little bit sized down and they don't have attached garages, we have reserved space in this basement for that. And so everyone down here would have a freezer and also cabinet space that would serve as their own individual, like what you would have in your garage, food storage space or paper towel storage or what have you. And so everyone has that delineated, and that works really nice because freezers also all come with a lock. They all come with a key, and no one ever uses it typically, but you could. And this is a perfect situation where that would work. So you could have easily locked cabinets and locked freezers down here. And then everyone has access to their secondary foods. And then we also have a community washer and dryer down here. So for those few homes in the neighborhood that may not have washer and dryer, or there's breaks and they need to use one, they can use these ones, as well as this one services all of the community building. So when you're doing quilting or whatever, you can come use these, or when you're just changing the linens in the guest bedrooms or what have you, you'd use these ones. And then coming down and around underneath the staircase, we have what I refer to as the emergency room. And so in here, we have an emergency kitchen. So there's just a simple stove, an oven combination, sink, and a small countertop here, which you could just use for, say, Thanksgiving dinner, where your stuff upstairs is maxed out and you need an extra oven like you always do. You can come down and use this one. But as well as this area here, I'm just going to show this one in my other screen that's better. But basically, we have a big storage room down here, and it has an emergency bathroom down here as well. So if all things went to crazy, the community could come down and they have access to their food, a cooking situation, a bathroom situation, and other storage and emergency stuff and other stuff down here. In the basement also is a concrete encased room, which would work as a short range shooting range, or if you could do partially that, but you could also do, and what I was leaning toward is you could fill this base thing with IBC containers. I guess it's redundant, IBCs, bulk containers, and fill them with tilapia. And you could pump their fish water up into the greenhouse, which is right here. And you can use aquaponics systems and have this as a food storage system or a food creation system. All right, so now I'm going to go through and show that digitally. Hopefully I don't make you sick, because sometimes scrolling through here can make people somewhat stickly. So I'm going to do dollhouse view. So very quickly, I'll just show we have the community workspace, and then a staircase, a bathroom. That's actually an elevator. And then everyone's got their own car space to give you an idea. Minivans, trucks, cars. So lots of rooms for bikes and stuff. Compact cars. You can fit 2 deep. The swimming pool room here. So we've got the sauna in the corner, and the bathroom. You'll notice this is slightly laid out slightly differently than that old picture. This is the most up-to-date picture. We have a rock climbing wall, current generators, hot tub, playroom, which has no toys in it right now. I just put that in there for once. And some exercise room, which I also need to decorate. And then this room with this tables, and then these tabletops become dining tables. And then this community kitchen here. And so the fridge, wall ovens, the microwaves all sit right there. And then this whole area is a cooking prep surface. This whole area is like a buffet area. So everything could be cooked right here as a group. And then all the food could be put here, and people could come line up, get their food, and then come sit down. This box right here is actually an island that rolls. And so if you don't need all hands on deck, you can just put this over here. But if you do, if you're all like making cookies or whatever for Valentine's Day or whatever, you're having a big Valentine's cookie party, you could roll this out so everyone could stand around it, and you could do that. You could also rent this space out as a commissary for food trucks. And you could also use it for anyone in the neighborhood who just wants to run their own little catering business or whatever. They can just reserve the space, and then you can see if that works. And you can have other people say, "No, you're starting to get too much invasive into the unit. Let's cut back on that." And then you can change it. And so the idea of having a non-static government is, I would say, essential to this. But we'll talk about that in a second. So anyway, so very versatile space here. And then that's the staircase going downstairs. And then there are doors. Let me just show doors from here that go into this garage space as well. Okay, and then going downstairs, give you an idea of how I've mapped it out, is every family has an upright freezer, and next to their upright freezer, they have upright cabinetry, which goes up and over their freezer as well. So every family would have this storage amount of food. And then this area here could either be more storage units depending on what we need, possibly some freezers for the community building itself, washer, dryer, some other stuff that could go here is currently not used. The electrical panels for the building are right here at the bottom of the stairs, so they're readily accessible. Everyone knows where they're at, but they're kept basically safe. And then through here, corridor down and around, comes to our little emergency kitchen. And so just a little simple emergency kitchen, bathroom, and then everyone down here has a room. Oh my gracious, that's really getting wild. Hey, let me get rid of that. It's driving me crazy. Oh, I'm all over the place. Sorry. For whatever reason, he's acting weird today. So we have these little rooms above. That's what I'm looking for. So these are all 9 by 5 storage units, basically, and people could store anything they want to that's not caustic, and it could be food or camping supplies or what have they. I don't care. More comic books. And then down through here, this is the basically a safe room for whatever purpose you want to use it for. And so, because we're all fully encased in concrete in that room, 100%. And then this is the foundation for the swimming pool. And this is where the building's mechanical systems would be. So the pool systems to help heat the pool, and then these water heaters, which heat the various domestic waters in the building. The whole building is run on in-floor heat, every level. So basement has in-floor heat, main level has in-floor heat, and the upstairs all has in-floor heat. I may actually switch that out and not have in-floor heat upstairs and just have each unit upstairs have their own mini split unit, which are also highly effective. And so, and then it's main floor. And then again, upstairs, I haven't decorated this room, but basically arts, crafts, flex rooms, guest bedrooms, office lounge, craft room, theater room. And so I need to decorate. I haven't worked on the third floor. And then on the roof of this thing, this whole southern side would be covered in solar panels to generate the power for this community building, and have that. And then here, the greenhouse starts at the top of this wall and comes down and comes out 20 feet. It could come out further. I'm currently designing one for a client that comes out 38 feet. And so this could really be as big as necessary. In this neighborhood that I designed for where it would fit, it would go 20 feet wide. And this building is 170 feet long, to give you an idea. So most of the building is slab on grade, and then just this partial basement is the basement area. And then, so that's the community building. And again, all the garages are up top and all these windows servicing those rooms upstairs. And then I'm a total nerd. And so I want personally, I've always wanted to have a koi pond and a water feature. And so I always thought it'd be cool where there's a fireplace planned right here on the inside. You could have a fireplace on the outside, and next to it, you could have a little moat and have a rock wall going up the side of this thing, part of the chimney system, and have a waterfall coming down here and go into the koi pond. But you can do all sorts of cool, fun, creative stuff. And you just get together as a community and decide what you want to do. So that's the community building. And then, so then the homes, I'll just show a couple models really quick, but homes are homes. And so there's not a whole lot to that. But generally speaking, they all have their porch. They're all 8x16 porches in this design. And then the homes are all the exact same, 25x57, perfect for a 6-inch ICF block. And then we have the house. So this house design, you can enter from here. So if you do a sidewalk from here to the main area and enter from the front, you can have this living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and laundry, I believe. And then what's it called? Another bathroom. Oh, there's laundry right there. And then another bedroom, and then the master bedroom. And so this is what is it? A 4-bedroom. That's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in 1,300 square feet. And again, the open area is kept open. So this whole area is nice and open. And then the rooms are small, because honestly, you go in there and you sleep for 8 hours and you leave. All right. So a lot of people build extra space in the bedrooms that I think is superfluous and unnecessary. So I spend my space and my time in big open areas. I literally just walk into this bedroom, and like this week, I think I've spent a total of like 15 hours in my bedroom. So why would I spend a whole bunch of space to make it big? It doesn't make much sense for me to do that. So that's one layout. This is my personal layout for my individual house that I've been planning. So on the main floor, I have my living room. So this is the living room entertainment system. Actually, I'll go digital, or I'll go dollhouse view for this. Hopefully. There we go. So I've got my porch area up front, and then I've got my living room space, and then bathroom, open area, office area. So the kids can do homework and what have they. And then big open countertop space. And then small dining room. Then we've got 1 bedroom, closet, bedroom. Actually, this is an office, so this is big enough for an office. It's actually big enough for a crib, so this would serve well as a nursery with like a rocking chair. And it's closet, and then this one would be another bedroom, and then the master bedroom, and then we have this bathroom, and then the laundry system here, and the mechanical room right there. The things you'll notice is I keep my mechanical rooms very small because these houses are net zero. They don't need much, and so they just take a tankless hot water heater. I guess they don't heat hot water, a tankless water heater to make hot water, and it heats the whole house and runs everything off just that. And then this particular design is my favorite feature, so I have to talk about it. I have a shower in my master bedroom, so I don't actually have to create a whole nother bathroom just to get a shower out of it, because I wanted 2 places to get ready in the mornings. And so someone could be using this bathroom in the morning, this one, and then the third one can be getting ready. So multiple people can be getting ready, even though it's only a 2-bathroom house. It's actually only a 1.5 bath house. But you can do innovative stuff like that when you don't tie yourself down to old mantras of a bathroom has to have a sink, a toilet, and a cleaning supply. You can just do a shower standalone. And then as part of my thing, I've always wanted my house to help pay for itself, as well as I always wanted to be able to help people in need. And so on the side of my house, I have this sidewalk, which goes up to the staircase, which accesses the upstairs room above it. And so upstairs, today, Junior. Oh, now I've clicked it twice now. I have to catch up. Hey, why are you not going upstairs? He doesn't like it. I'm gonna have to dollhouse view that nonsense. Let me cut off the roof. I know it worked. That's how I started in this. Maybe I'll just go to the floor plan. All right, so upstairs I have a studio apartment that covers half of the house. And so it's just closet, living room, bedroom, basically what you'd find in a hotel room or an extended stay hotel room, because it's got a full kitchen and bathroom. So yeah, I would just rent that out as part of the neighborhood. So that way there are rentals in the community. Generally speaking, and for those who haven't read the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Mormon, there's a chapter, it's called Jacob chapter 5. It is probably one of the best dissertations on societal growth that most people have never read. But basically the premise is you can maintain a culture of a society if you keep the balance intact. And so co-housing neighborhoods are very much that way, I believe. So in a co-housing neighborhood, you can't have it full rentals, because rentals don't have, the mentality of a rental is that they don't have as much responsibility toward the group that they're part of. They think of themselves as transients, and which is why it's actually called transient housing, because they don't have roots developed into the system most of the time. You do have a subset of society who are what I would refer to as perpetual renters, who've just accepted they're not going to gain any equity, and it's just a cost of living to have a place to live. But generally speaking, most people think of, in our society, they think of renting as a temporary situation on their way going to somewhere else. And just like most people on their way going to someone else, they close their eyes and they forget to look at the viewpoints as they travel, and miss the joy on the journey, which is unfortunate, but that's how they see their life. And so they don't often integrate themselves into the surrounding society around them, which is why apartment complex living is so weird, because most people don't sit down and establish themselves in a lifestyle while they're living there. They mostly just live, well, they just exist, I suppose. They don't really live, and it's kind of a sad situation. But anyways, that said, a lot of people want to try co-housing, or I don't want to rent temporarily, but a lot of co-housing doesn't have a whole lot of rentals because they want that integrated approach. They want a lot of people you need to be committed to it, because it takes about 5 hours a month per household to help maintain everything, which isn't a lot. I mean, that's Saturday morning, everyone gets together from 8 to 9 a.m. and knocks out all the chores. So it integrates that. But I wanted that as part of an option, as well as to help supplement the income of my house so it pays for itself. And there's something else I want to say about that. Oh, and this is also good for like mother-in-law suite and stuff like that too. So that way, if I just have family, or my mom's widowed now, and so this would be a good place for her. Except for I need to get an elevator because her knees are going out. So, but there's other houses for that on the neighborhood. So so that's kind of that situation. And then other house models. So I've just drawn a couple here. So this one is if you want to use. So there's a bigger family, say they have the same footprint. But on the main floor, we've got, say, a master suite situation and 2 bedrooms. And then upstairs, it takes the full upstairs. So same footprint, but you can really double the space and get an extra 3 big bedrooms and a community space up here. So this house is like 2,600 square feet and like 6 bedrooms and 3 baths. So it's like really big as far as what you get in the same amount of space, because the footprints are all the same, so the site plan matches. All right, and so let's see here. That is that. Let me go back to here. So I'll go over through here. So I named this neighborhood Caritas Commons. A lot of co-housing neighborhoods are called commons because they share things in commons. And Caritas means charity, basically, so brotherly love. And so that's really the idea that I'm pulling from this. Is I really like the idea that you can do more together by sharing amenities. And then you can go through this website. I'll share that link with you guys. But basically, it has several ideas. All of which kind of coincide. So this is the composite nature of co-housing. It's a composite structure. It takes elements from various things and turns them into something that you would not see otherwise. Because if I had a building, if I had a room like this in my house, and I had a room like this in my house, and I had this in my house, and I had this in my house, and I had this, my house would cost me $5 million. If I built it myself, I could do it for 2 million. But all that at the same time, it's like, do I really need all that? Because I wouldn't even get to use it if I was all by myself. And so, so by there's tons of benefits and stuff like this: community meals, gym partnerships, friendships. So I think it's much more holistic way of doing it. And then I will touch on one thing really quick, because I'm a nerd. So, so with my background in building custom homes, I'm a little over an hour, so I'm trying to wrap this up. So with my background of building custom homes, but with an emphasis in engineering, I'm always thinking about optimizing, making it better. How do I improve what's already being done? And so, so what I've done basically is I've taken the technologies I've used in big homes and I cut out all the fluff. And I've done that thing with the whole neighborhood as well. I've taken the fluff out of the house. I've ripped out its extra space rooms, its basement rooms, and stripped those out, shoved them all into one big room. So that room can be divided and subsidized by the group as a whole. And so that way you can pay the same you would pay for a house, possibly even less if you do labor yourself to build the homes. And you get way more than your regular 3-bed, 2-bathroom house by basically inverting the model. But the homes are built a specific way, so it doesn't waste money, but still looks cute. And so they're all ICF construction, which is insulated concrete forms. These have a true R value of about R28, but they behave very similar to an R40, R50. So they're very insulative, very comfortable, and they're soundproof, which is also a very nice feature when you live close to each other. They have simple geometry because a roof like this is cheap and fast to build. And I can literally, I just put a roof on this week, an A-frame. That's 1412 pitch, so nothing like this. But I was able to throw all the rafters in 2 days for that house because it's just one set of things. I just built a house like that. It took me like 2 months to frame that house because it was obnoxious and it was 9,000 square feet. But anyways, when you get all this convolution mess, it just adds money. And to me, the money that it adds to look like that does not ever pay for itself. I spend most of my time working out of my house or building stuff in my house. I don't spend my time looking at my house from the outside. I mean, to me, that's vanity. Vanity peaks is what I would call them. In the house, it's all in-floor heat, so it's much more comfortable heating. If anyone's ever had radiant heat versus forced, it's like never go back. On the roof, I eliminate all penetrations on the roof. So A, they're ugly, but B, they're just points for water leak. So I want my house to be built once and live forever. I use standing seam metal roofs because they're gonna outlive me easily. And it looks like this. There's no penetrations in it whatsoever, nice, clean, and then easy to attach solar panels or what have you to it. Quality windows. Unfortunately, most people neglect the window component of a house, and it's really embarrassing. But I use European tilt turn windows in my houses. They're all triple glazed windows. They all have a U value for those nerds who pay attention to what those things are, of less than 0.2. Ideally, I get close to like 0.18, 0.14, but less than 0.2 if I'm trying to be economical. 0.23 if I'm being really economical. I can get double paned, triple glaze, or double glazed instead of triple, but I'd like triple glaze. If wanted, you can do over insulation on these ICF houses, so you can actually add more insulation. If you're interested in that nerdy thing, there's a good website called iowanest.com. This is where that detail is from. They built a passive house out of ICF, and they've added an extra like 6 inches of EPS on the outside. I do my attic insulation differently, so it's really insulated well. I'd have 0 stairs on the exterior. Everything is 0 entry, and so there's no curbs anywhere. So everything is ADA accessible and wheelchair accessible. So it's very multi-generational. For siding, fiber siding and stone cladding that's screw on. Very simple to install. As a community, they can install things themselves, and you can get really cute designs with fiber cement. The floors inside, the default is a stained concrete floor because it's way cheaper than other options. You already have to build a floor anyways, so using it as your final finished floor surface is very cost effective, but you can always throw other stuff on this if you wanted to. You can throw carpet down or rugs or LVT or LVP or what have you. All the lighting is LED, so you can change your own colors. You can change your the temperature of the lighting, as well as it costs a lot less to run. All the homes have an HRV or an ERV system to help give them fresh air because they're designed so airtight. I use frost protected shallow foundations, not exactly this design. I have a new one I've designed. Frost protected shallow foundations, so they're very simple to build. I just scratch the ground about a foot deep and install the building, so I don't have to worry about digging down and do footers and then backfill and all that other jazz. Slab on grade's where it's at. For people who are getting into real details, you can pay attention to your awnings. So like for front porch awnings and other side awnings, and you can extend those eaves so that your solar intake matches, and so you can balance your house so you don't have to spend money on cooling. You can do it naturally. Same way with, you can plant deciduous trees, so in the summertime they provide you shade, and in the wintertime the leaves are gone and the sun shines through those leaves and gives you southern sun, which, if anyone wasn't aware, that's probably the most blessed gift heaven has given us, is deciduous trees for household shading. That is probably the most granted gift that people ignore, is putting deciduous trees on their southern side. You load it full of windows and the trees block your heat from overheating in the summer, and then you get all that heat in the winter, and it's brilliant, but no one does it because they don't pay attention to it. Ideally, where homes are nested next to each other, you'll notice this window has very few or no windows on this side. And so this house would have windows on this side facing this yard. And so when you're close to each other, you can pay attention to that, but you can also use screenings such as trees and stuff. So like, if it were me, I'd plant fruit trees and plums and stuff and have basically the whole community, the trees around the community and through the neighborhood would all be like fruit trees, and make a little fruit orchard for the neighborhood. I use cellulose because it's cheap. I do proper attic ventilation with 2-foot raised heels, so I reach R70 for this. The The water heaters are very simple to run the whole system. It looks something like that to run the whole house. And actually for these houses, it would be one tube up and one tube down. So it would be really small. And so that's your whole utility system in a closet. So it doesn't have to be very big at all. And then European cabinetry, because it's the most effective and it's easy to install. Solar panels on the homes. This is if you're just designing. Ideally, you always put parking on your southern side. That's what it looks like. This is what the northern sides of buildings look like. But sometimes you can't get away from it. I use simplified bracing systems. By ordering in bulk, you can reduce costs. You have to install windows properly, which most people don't, so I do that. I also optimize the buildings. That's why they're all the exact sizes they are, is because I do not have to do any of this when I build. For anyone who's done ICF, they would appreciate that. I also eliminate as much wood as I can in the structure because this is all totally unnecessary. I do what's called advanced framing, where you just use just what you need. 5/8 sheathing instead of 7/16, so the roof lasts a long time. So those are just a few physical components. So, because a lot of times I tell people, yeah, you can get the same house for way less, and they're like, well, how's that possible? And I'm like, well, if you think smarter rather than just do stuff, you don't have to worry about it. So this is the governance part, and this will be the last part really quick. The HOA and the CCNRs, it has to be there, obviously. The group has to be managed, it has to be maintained, and it has to be specifically cultivated to bring out the best in it, all right? So if you leave a ground to be on its own, it's going to grow thistles and briars or whatever and weeds, and the ground's not going to do anything. But with a little bit of care, you can turn that ground into grass, which, you know, almost useful if you like to play sports, or you can take that same piece of ground and you can plant food in it. And so in the same 1 acre piece of ground, depending on how you maintain it, you can get all sorts of stuff. And so and I think that's the very similar thing with an HOA. If you just left a neighborhood like this on its own, it would go fallow and get full of weeds and thistles and unmaintained, and it'd be a bad deal. But if you overwork it and you HOA it with Gestapo style, with soup Nazi style regulations, then everyone's going to hate it, and you're going to get burnout, and the ground's going to get burned. And so you have to balance it effectively. And so it's like taking care of a farm. And I think Heartwood Co-housing does it the best. And so Heartwood Co-housing is a co-housing neighborhood near Durango. Let me hold on. Someone's messaging me about some stuff. Okay. And they're near Durango, Colorado. But I really just like the way they've done this. And this is what's really cool too. This is very common amongst the co-housing neighborhood, is the idea that, hey, look, we've learned from others. Feel free to take what we've done and use it and have it be the step up for you guys. And so all of this is basically the template that I would be using. How it works is they have oh wait, hold on. I pressed the wrong button. Hide my floating meeting controls. Okay, here it is. So they have the legal description is their HOA covenants. And that's the legal document. However, this is the most important thing here. In practice, we rarely refer to our covenants. This is kind of like the background that you don't really touch, but they serve as the legal background if things go crazy. Typically, they stick to their community agreements. And so in their community agreements section, it basically says, hey, look, this is what we value. These are the agreements we've made to each other. This is who we are. This is how you become a member and maintain a membership. This is how we do things. And these are things that we've done. So we separate into teams. We have community work teams and meal teams and all these different things. And it's just really well laid out. And so for those who are really curious, I'd say this is probably one of the best places to look to see how an active, functioning, healthy co-housing neighborhood functions, and go through here, because they basically just say, hey, look, this is my life. And a lot of it's generic, but it ties people together. So most of these are like, particularly like talking to a libertarian, you tell them you're going to go live in a neighborhood like this. They're like me. I'm like, watch yourself, pal. You don't tell me how to live my life. And a lot of this is basically that. So look, we're not telling you how to live your life. We're just telling you, hey, if you can live within these parameters and agree to these to yourself and let other people live to that, we'll all get along great. And so they have it just really, really well done. So, and with that in mind, there's one other thing that I think everyone should learn, and it's sociocracy. But basically, the idea of sociocracy, and maybe I'm more attuned to this because I'm a nerdy engineer type. It was designed by an electrical engineer who based people management based on the principles of electronic feedback. And it basically says, hey, look, how about we try something, test it, and give feedback on it and say, hey, is it working or not? And if it's working, hey, let's keep doing it and make little tweaks over time. And let's not set ourselves down into being such a rigid structure. Like most HOAs, they have these rigid structures. But because that's the only level of governance they have, they're always against the back line. They're always backed against the wall. And so everyone feels backed against the wall. But if you can alleviate that by creating another layer called the agreements or the guidance guidelines, you're living by those guidelines. And then there's all sorts of fluidity because there's no legal process involved. You just say, hey, you know what? Hey, let's make this option. So like when you're designing the neighborhood, say, hey, look, the neighborhood says we don't want any 4-foot fences because we want to be able to have it feel open. We want it to we want it to feel big, right? So we don't have fences to block everybody in because the goal isn't isolation. The goal is the privacy you need and the separation. And so people will say, well, what about my dog? My dog jumps over a 4-foot fence. So okay, in that consideration, what if we did a partially transparent part of the back or your backyard? You can have, say, a 5-foot fence, and the front yard we can keep it open, and you can have varying levels of variety. And then later on down the road, we can see if that's working or not. And in teams, you can say, hey, you know what? We've had this rule, like we've been like everyone's worked 5 hours a month. We're not quite getting everything done. Can we switch it to 6 hours a month next month and see if that works for everybody? And you can test it, and nothing's set in stone. Everything's kind of very fluid and dynamic. And since people are dynamic, it's important to have a dynamic governance. And that's what sociocracy really is. It's dynamic governance, which is another word for it. And that's how it all kind of runs together. So that's kind of the presentation. This particular neighborhood, I'll just quickly touch on, was designed for a spot of ground in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which as of 2 months ago, I just found out 2 days ago, was sold. The land was sold. So that particular lot and this particular arrangement on the lot is, I've basically given up on it because this particular arrangement is now gone because someone took the land because they couldn't get people out. But the same premise can be taken, picked up, and put pretty much anywhere else, slightly rearranged to match healthy things nearby, like if there's lakes or rivers or woodlands, you can kind of orient it in that way, things like that. But this particular neighborhood, the one I've shown you, is not currently being planned for that location anymore. So a lot of that would get changed. Yeah, so what questions do people have? I can answer here for a few minutes if anyone wants to answer or ask questions or comments or anything. And then I'll just show little things like this while I answer questions. Thank you for coming to my talk. And thank you for Jennifer for setting it all up. So hold on. I probably did something with permissions here. Am I out? Am I gone? Can people hear me? Hold on. Let me. Okay. Oh, so, and people can talk. Are people able to talk, or do I need to push a button to make people talk?
We have our opportunity to mute ourselves or unmute. So
okay, good. All right.
Joshua, that's freaking brilliant, dude. Like both your preparation and your vision and the way you're executing and adding value to so many people. It's like super inspiring to me. That's number one. Number two, yeah, I'm like crazy excited
Yeah,
about the philosophies behind this. And then also the way that like you're walking it out. Like it's not just a pipe dream. It's like there's so much that makes sense about what you're saying around sustainability, around like make roofs simple. Like,
yeah,
and the whole philosophy behind like, I love that you come from a very libertarian ideology. And at the same time, it's like, we're not living in socialism, but we are living in community. And it
exactly.
makes sense to have one lawnmower. Like, you don't spend a ton of time in your bedroom, you spend a ton of time in the common room. So, like, why would we need all these huge houses? And like, I love your like the way you honor artisans. And at the same time, like, what can we free up resource wise by keeping things simple and putting the artistry into landscaping or whatever else we want to do with the space? It's like feeling deeply inspired. Questions. That piece of land in Idaho Falls, how many acres was that?
That is on 2.77 acres.
Harley.
Yep. On less than 3 acres, you could fit 15 homes
With
with
all the
all of that.
community stuff that was packed in there.
Yep. Yeah. This community building is 65 by 170. And this greenhouse space is 20 by 170. And then I actually had planned also this room behind the fuel shed could be used for rabbit hutchery as well as chicken keeping. So that way it's kind of kept to the side so people who want to deal with that can, and people who don't want to deal with that don't have to. And then you could also have an apiary here with the bees. And so you can have bees come and go migrate the what's all the little fruit trees in the neighborhood. So yeah, you should be able to do it pretty dense and have, I mean, if you did like a mittlighter system or permaculture, you could probably get to the point where this space could service all 15 homes on less than 5 acres. Yeah.
That, yeah, that gets me so stoked. Like there's plenty of space, plenty of resources. We're going to create more. I love hanging out with smart people. One other question that came up. So like we're in Tennessee, there's a lot of flooding in our area and a lot of tornado in our area. I know like very little about building materials. I imagine ICF does what it needs to do in tornado situations and
It
flooding
is
situations.
probably the only one that you're going to get a reduced homeowner's insurance from in a tornado alley. There's a huge what's it called, increase in people doing ICF structures in those. In fact, you can even do a concrete roof as well on these homes. I just built a home a couple months ago that has all the walls are concrete and the roof is concrete too. They built it basically as the Apocalypse Now building. So
Right, a lot of that going on.
yeah, so I've built several of I'm starting to build. That's a lot of the clientele I get are people who are like, hey, let's build a big shop. Let's have a big greenhouse. Let's have a safe room. I'm like, this seems to be a trend. Someone's worried about something.
And I think there's a lot to be said about having the support of neighbors around you in a situation.
Yeah.
If things go south, which I'm hoping they would never do. Or I mean, like maybe small things like I know that Adams went through a tornado and the neighbors came, or no, it was flooding and neighbors poured in to help people. But this is like built in, like if there's minor catastrophes, you have neighbors there, you know.
Yep. And they're neighbors you know,
Are,
which is I think a big difference from a neighbor who you don't know.
Yeah.
And I liked your, oh, go ahead.
Please, Jen.
Oh, I liked his idea. He shared with me like a week or two ago that there would be a bunch of cameras everywhere. So your eyes could be everywhere while you're at home. If you want to check on, hey, where's Tommy? Is Tommy like, you know, playing with the neighbor kids? Let me quickly see. Oh, it looks like he's playing basketball or he's in the craft room or whatever. And then it just kind of gives you peace of mind to allow for like people to commingle a little bit more. Because Mark, my husband, was like bringing up, well, you're bringing a bunch of people into close spaces together. Like just like it would have that like sense of like independence and interdependence, and there's like responsibility layered in there with the cameras and just knowing each other
Yeah. And I like you mentioned that word. I use it word, people who've read certain books start speaking the same way because they use the same words. But I just listened to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People again. I like to do that every couple of years, but I should probably do it more often. But the idea of the levels of maturity of dependence, independence, and interdependence as society, I think most society is stuck in independence and they don't know that there's something better than interdependence. And
They're
I
in
think
competition.
this community, I think, is the culmination of taking interdependence and physically making it and getting it to the point where you can do that. And part of that, I think, like, there should be part of like rules of membership. I would think it should help weed people out naturally. They'll find a place that's comfortable to themselves. And one of the ways I would weed that out is like, hey, you have to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as part of your membership list. And there are communities that do that. In fact, when you get into how to become a members group, it'll be like, you have to read this book, and it's on their list because they're like, there's no way I can teach you how to do it. And so, like, it tells you specifically, you have to read through this section on our values, you have to agree to it, and this is, look, you have to do this, you have to read or do following the books of specific chapters. And so you have to read the book Cohousing, you have to understand what we're trying to achieve, you have to understand how community works, and it's part of it. And like, one of mine would be like, you have to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, understand what is interdependence, and are you working toward that level. And so it's part of the model is helping people grow intentionally. It's not, growth isn't an accident unless you want it to be a weed. And so
my mind's going wild with like, how could this be franchised?
I know, right?
Like, because you talked about like, I love to build stuff, marketing's whatever. And I'm just thinking about some of the best marketers I know. It was like I know truth when I hear it. And there's so much here that makes sense. And especially with the contrast of like what's going on in the current housing market and all that stuff. And with people's own personal values and confusion about their personal values.
Exactly.
And the way that families compete with each other and the way that kids inside of families compete with each other. And like, that's what I seek to change in my own work. And I'm seeing so many avenues for like, yeah, you get a group of 12 people committed to a similar value set, whether that's Covey, whether that's, pick your thing.
Yeah.
Like, let tribes form with people that have common interests. And I'm curious, like, yeah, how to get other builders on board.
Yep, exactly. And that's really what I would love to do. So I've been currently trying to just get one neighborhood done, like my little prototype child that I want to go and live in personally. But after that, I would love to basically just say, hey, let's have a big community group meeting. All you people, nerdy engineer types who want more workspace than you know what to do with, let's build your community house based on that. You've got all your crazy stuff. And then all you foodie people, you couldn't care less about woodworking, you can get way more green space on yours, and you could be living in a little eco world of trees and fruit, look like Eden over there. And then and you can separate it by those little pods of 10 to 15. In fact, in the Pocket Neighborhoods group, neighborhoods in a village, so this is like the overall landscape of that. He does he basically says, hey, look, here's a pocket neighborhood and here's another pocket neighborhood, and these each individual ones could say, hey, look, this is the artisty group, these people like whatever, their community house would tailor toward that, and then this would tailor toward that. And so I think I mean, a lot of it's similar to the I think appreciation and use are very similar, and gratitude is very similar. And as it's stated that the further away someone is from the giver, the further the recipient is from the giver, the greater tendency there is to feel entitled and less grateful for it. But when people are close to each other, the giver and the receiver are in a closer relationship, the level of gratitude is increased. I think the same thing applies with use and functionality. I think having one big community building that services 30,000 people, you pay for it in your taxes and you pay little for it. You pay $5 a month of property taxes to help fund the building, but because of that, you don't utilize it either. And so, but if everyone were paying $100 a month into it and it only serviced 20 people, you're going to get the value out of it. And it's going to make much more sense to you. And to me, I think it's very similar to the idea of the family and how church systems are set up. You have a family unit inside each home, and then you have a family unit as a pod cluster, and then you've got cousins and a master family planned unit, and it should grow in order of how life is set up in groups of families. Really is how it that's how I think our psyche is designed to be like that. I think we're not, I don't think family is an accident. And I think broadening that to more people, if done intentionally and purposefully, works well. If you try to throw someone in who doesn't understand the goal, they might get confused and they're going to get rubbed the wrong way. But if you help cultivate it in such a way that you emphasize it intentionally, it'll work out.
Like cameras could be like, what are you big brothering me? Or it could be like, oh, I just want to check on my kids.
Exactly.
What's the intention behind it, and what are the community agreements around it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, very much so. Yeah, because to one person it's a tool and one person it's a weapon. So
yeah, I like every step of this is very methodical, and I like creations that are like that. Like, I'm a part of the school community where everything is the same way, and it works so well because people feel this like deep connection with it because they know that everything is purposeful. And I like that you're bringing that into neighborhoods, and I like your vision of it on a large scale. And I'm just happy to see this happen somewhere for you, because I think this is a great prototype. So that's the idea of sharing the word. If you guys know of other people that would love to have this recording or hear this information of Joshua's, I think we should get some energy and fire behind it to make it happen. So I appreciate everybody that's listening to this or attending at the moment. And Joshua, obviously you. So thank you for sharing so much. Yeah,
absolutely.
Any more thoughts before I end the recording here?
I will show you. If anyone needs to contact me, this is my contact information. I can be reached at jlrubybusiness@gmail.com, or you can call or text me at 719-761-5027. And I've made a website, but I don't actually maintain it, so that's almost useless, but I do technically have a website. So, but yeah, so going forward, if anyone has spots of land, Ross Chapin specifically, he goes after infill lots, and that's my favorite thing as well. It's finding a weird spot of land that is just around, that you say, hey, look, there's behind this grocery store, there's 5 acres that's never being used because it's too small for a regular residential development. It's too big for one house and it's in a weird spot, and it's too out of the way for a regular business to go in there. It's awkward land, and it's awkward for a community park because the access couldn't handle that kind of traffic. And so looking for awkward land like that is how I go about it. So if anyone's just curious, this is how I go about it. I go to Google Maps, and this is how I find it. So this is how I would encourage people to do it. If you're looking for stuff in your area, go to Google Maps, go to a city of your interest, such as to say, I'll go to Idaho Falls here. So go here, turn on your satellite layers, and zoom in and look for green. Hey, turn on satellite layers sometime today, Junior. Oh, I guess I was on satellite. Okay. And then you just look for green space or brown space actually. And so, so right over here, I've noticed some stuff. There's brown space over where it looks like they were going to finish building a neighborhood, but they didn't, and it died. So something's happened over here. I'm like, okay, what's happened over here? What's already over here? And oh, actually, that's kind of neat. Oh, look, it's a community garden space. I should go down there and see what they're doing over there. That's cool. Anyways, but there's apparently some space here that's fallow for whatever reason. It's right next to this creek right here. And so I can then come in here, and if I get onto, for people who aren't familiar with this thing, you can do GIS, Idaho Falls. GIS is really helpful for people who've never done GIS. But it's the digital version of all the plot maps going on in the area. So I can then find that location in the plot map, and oh, I see it here. So I see this space, and I can see, oh, how, and I can go and say, there's that space there. It's a 5-acre spot right there. And I've got this other space here, so it's another 5 acres. So it's space, and then you can go to here and you can, and so I don't know what their plans are for it, but that's basically the process. Is you go through and you see, find a place, and you can go through and then see the map. You can do it all on here, but it takes a lot longer to load because it has so many layers on it.
That was my next question. So there's like a 5-acre piece of land that we're looking at here south of Nashville. It's up for auction. It's got one home on it currently.
Perfect.
And I was curious how to understand, like, what are the zoning laws to look at something like.
Correct. So typically what you'll do is you'll go to a place. So once you find a spot of land, there's these parcel viewers. So parcel viewers will sometimes tell zoning, but what you'll typically need to go do is if you go here and you look up Idaho Falls zoning map, it will often tell you, it'll have one like this. So this is like, it'll have big ones like this. This is more like city planning ones. The ones you'll typically want to do is if I go back to the GIS, some cities are really convenient and have it all on one map. Idaho Falls has split theirs up into multiple little maps, which is partially helpful but partially annoying. And so like they have one for their fiber service, they have one for their street apps and whatever, their bike paths, and then development maps. So you're going to look for something called a development map typically. And the development map will have its zoning, and land use map is the normal term you're going to find. So in a land use map, they'll color code everything, and each of these color codes will typically tell you what they are. And so each color here, single family dwelling is this color here. So this is all single family dwelling housing. And then you can see downtowns are typically red. Yep, retail trade. So this is all the retail hub center. And so if I go over to where I was at in my little example, homes, first 25th, where'd my land go? Right there. So these two spots here are the ones I was looking at. Those are 2 5-acre. My guess is that they're green for parks. Oh, say they're gray, vacant. That's what they're vacant. So right now they have no plans, owned by the city, vacant. This would be absolutely perfect for what I'm doing because it's right there. So I just need to talk to the city of Idaho Falls and be like, hey, you're wasting space. Let's put something here and put some homes on here. Honestly, I could do it. I could do way more houses on 10 acres if we had the people. Or I could say, hey, let me take 3 acres test my idea, and if you like it, I'll build a whole another set right here and do that. And because the community, they are looking for ways of providing homes that don't cost $1 million. It's obnoxious right now. And so they're interested in that, but that's kind of the process you would go to. GIS online. And you can go pretty much anywhere in the country. Most places will have their GIS operable like this with land use tables and stuff. So.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks for, I have no idea about how that was done, how you found
Yeah,
that.
that's the process developers
Nice.
go through. This is development 0 right here, where you're just like, let's go find some land. So
Does the template for these pocket communities work on hills, or does it need to be flat?
hills are great. You know, it really just depends. If you go to pocket neighborhoods, you'll see examples of pocket neighborhoods. Let's see where they at.
It's got a bunch up in different places. So like, even if it's ADA, it can still be on a hill.
Correct. And there are certain things you're going to have to give up for being on a hill. Like,
Yeah.
But
like,
yeah,
it can adapt with that. It's not just like,
exactly. Get the power wheelchair out if you're at the top of the hill.
awesome.
So, yeah, generally speaking, they are, oh, here we go. Site plan examples. They've got, oh, those are just site plans. They have actual full neighborhoods that they've done. But anyways.
Sorry, Joshua, can you let Heather back in?
Oh, yes.
I don't
Sorry.
see her, but I think it's because I'm not host. Thank you.
Sorry, I things beep on me. I don't know what I'm looking. I don't know what
Oh,
all these sounds are.
Heather, did you have questions too? We were just doing some question and answer stuff at the end here.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just wondering, well, actually, yeah, I did have a question. I was wondering if we could be sent like those floor plans and stuff. Is that a possibility? Or like, is that a website where you have all that stuff?
So I have this website here, and it has the, let's see what it has as far as its homes. So it basically says 25 by 57. So within that you can design, and I have a few basic model plans, like, so that's my house, my upstairs, a different rendering of another house, another rendering of another house. So I have these ones up here. These ones are not the most up to date, but they give you an idea for sense and scale. So I do have this is on the website. For the these ones here, I haven't sent these to layout to PDF right now. These are just all in my CAD program. But I could create a PDF. I can compile a PDF document of everything I have currently. And what I really need to do is make a PDF of all this and I haven't set down to make a slides for all this. I need to make a slides, then there's a presentation slide. What I've been meaning to do is that exactly, like if you go to co-housing neighborhood, and you want to learn about what is co-housing, they have a slide deck that it walks you through basically and says, this is co-housing, and it talks you all about it. And so this is what I've been meaning to get around to doing, but they have a slide deck of going through. And of course my internet connection is unstable, so rural Idaho. Goes through a slide deck to make, then have all the houses on it. But I can at least get the PDFs over to Jennifer, and then she can
I'll get them to you guys.
Get them out. So
That's great.
And then one other question. Sorry, I just want to say this is like absolutely fascinating. I think this is just so phenomenal, so interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to show us all of this. And then my other question, I'll listen because I'm sure I missed a lot of things. But I was wondering, and if you haven't already answered this, are you set in doing your first community in Idaho Falls? Are you looking for properties elsewhere? We're over in Boise, so I'm like, hey, not this way, but
I'll go up Boise. In fact, I prefer Boise. Because it's big enough. So my wife and I, we run a Brazilian martial arts studio as well. We teach Brazilian capoeira. And so in a small town, a very niche martial art like that is hard to do. We are the only capoeira studio, to give you an idea, we're the only capoeira studio in the state of Idaho. and probably the nearest one is Salt Lake City, 4 hours away.
There you go,
And
okay.
there's no capoeira pretty much anywhere around here. So we, as my wife says, we live in a capoeira desert. And anywhere I take my wife, she's going to need capoeira because that's her therapy. And so we started a studio here, not because we want to run a business. We have no interest in that. But we started a studio so she could have capoeira. So getting to a bigger town is great. So Boise would be awesome for us. And it's in the banana belt. So it's actually a lot warmer than Rexburg, even though it's in a similar latitude. So short answer, no, we're not tied into Idaho Falls anymore because they bought my piece of property, crushed my hopes and dreams. And so I'm writing them off. So, that said, I have homes that I'm committed to build from now to September. And so I am stuck in Idaho until those 6 homes are built. And obviously I always have to be planning for my next thing afterward. Possibly I can actually take some time off after I'm done building these ones. So I would have availability to go other places after that. We are not tied down to anywhere. Both of our families are in Colorado, but I can't handle Colorado right now. I haven't gotten over my bad rub with those people, and so me and Colorado are at ends right now. So I don't really want to go back. But any city bigger than 50,000 people is kind of open to us. We'd really like to be 50,000 or more. Which in Idaho, that's like, oh, you need a big city. And other places like, that's a tiny city. But but we need a bigger city of at least 50,000. And ideally, an infill place. So it's not like totally on the outside of town. But that's not as big a deal. If we have the neighborhood, it's not huge. My wife and I, we're not big animal people. So people who want like horses and cows and do the whole goat lifestyle, kind of like Heartwood co-housing, I think those would be a good fit for some people, just not me. And again, this neighborhood was designed initially as my own personal neighborhood to live in, but that is also not a requirement. If some other group gets together and they have their own ideal and they just need someone to help them realize it and actualize it, I am okay with that too. And I can come out and be their builder. So I could help build it and be the developer, or at least they are the developers and I'd be the general contractor and the superintendent. So something like that would also work. But initially designed, I would like to live in one of these as soon as possible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So on this initial design with the 12 houses, what size of lot are you looking at?
So that is on 3 acres, basically.
Oh, really?
That's it. It
Because
doesn't,
my in-laws have 5 acres out here in Boise, and we are doing all sorts of cool stuff. So
let's do it. We're
interesting.
moving
Let's
right
talk.
now. Boise it is.
Let's talk.
I'd love Boise. My brother,
Okay.
my brother goes to ICOM right now. He graduates in about a month from and gets his medical degree over at ICOM. So he's in Boise right now. So I'll be over in Boise in about a month to go to his graduation anyway. So
Cool. Well,
so I'm in the area.
it's fascinating. Okay, cool.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna pause the recording.